And moderating the discussion will be Global CEO, Forsman and Bodenfors, Toby, Southgate. Please welcome the team.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks also to Ben for possibly the worst pronunciation of Forsman and Bodenfors in history. It's an absolute pleasure and actually a treat that's making me a little nervous to be on stage today with two icons of their respective fields. Grainne Wafer is the Global Director of Beer, Guinness and Baileys at DIAGEO, perhaps the world's most exciting drinks company and definitely one of the iconic brand-building centers of excellence in the world. And then further to my right, a giant of my preferred sport. I'm delighted to say a former West Ham United player. I wish you'd stayed longer, Frank. But, you know, I'm a Frank fan and a football fan, as well as being a West Ham fan. 106 England caps, 211 Premiership goals, 3 Premier Leagues, a Champions League, Europa Cup, 4 FA Cups, runner-up for both the Ballon d'Or and the World Player of the Year, and has scored, my favourite Frank fact, more goals from outside the penalty box than any player in Premiership history, including, and not in the Premiership, the worst disallowed goal of all time. So we'll save more discussion on that for later. But where we're going to start first is in the pub. Grainne's father used to run a pub not too far from the St James's Brewery in Dublin. Frank and his dad own a pub, and pubs are one of the places, a pub is an abbreviation for public house, where people get together to talk about things, sport sometimes, communities, relationships, shared passions. Earliest memories of pubs, please, and how they brought out a passion in you, both, that has been part of your career and your lives over the last 3 or 4 decades in both your cases.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, if you've ever visited the Guinness Storehouse or the brewery in Dublin, one of the things you will really note is the smell of roasted barley in the air, right? It's absolutely delicious when the roasters are on. And people are surprised that we still roast our barley right there in the middle of the city today. And I think that's probably my earliest memory, is actually the smell of brewing, the smell of the roasted barley. And then, of course, the little Friday night package of a bottle of Coca-Cola, which wasn't really, it was a special treat in the house, and a pack of peanuts and, maybe Fanta, Pepsi, and they'd come into the house and we'd be very excited to get them. They're my memories, yeah.
Brilliant. Frank?
Yeah, great memories. My father owned a pub, as you say, owned various pubs actually growing up, and I suppose my memory are nice memories, but also memories of asking to go home, and he said, "One more, son," and made me stay that bit longer, which I've inherited that trait, unfortunately. But nice memories, and the pub that I actually own in Chelsea in London is something where my mother and father used to go to, walk from where they were living to Chelsea games, stop for a drink on the way there, stop for a drink on the way back. So there's a lot of sentimental value for me, and I obviously love the environment of socialising, talking with people. I like a real traditional pub, like a pub's pub would always be my thing.
Brilliant. Overlapping with sports, obviously something that over the last 10 days or so, some incredible news from Guinness, taking the role as lead partner for the English Premier League. Frank, a place that you know very well. Talk to us a little bit about that, like the intersection of brands and sport and communities. Maybe, Grainne, a little bit of the history and the rationale for this pretty significant commitment.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you know, Guinness has a long history, very established in rugby, and we recently re-signed our Guinness Six Nations deal just earlier this year, and we also extended it to cover the Guinness Women's Six Nations. And we also have a very strong presence with football, particularly in Africa, which people might be surprised about. Guinness is the #1 brand associated with football through a media partnership that we have there. And we've been looking for a property that really puts, the iconic kind of nature of Guinness, that big global brand, but also that captures the passion and the heartbeat of what's happening in local communities, local bars around the world. So the Premier League has long been in our sight list. We've been looking at it for a number of years, and we were absolutely thrilled when ourselves and the Premier League came to announce Guinness as the official beer and Guinness Zero as the official non-alc beer. And we're also going to be the responsible drinking partner of the Premier League. So a really exciting range of assets that we're buying into. But honestly, the most important thing that we're buying into is that intersection of the values of the brand. And on Guinness, anybody who's heard anybody speak about Guinness before will know there are three words we have at the core of Guinness, and they're power, goodness, and communion. And they're three words that are sort of central to our strategy and have been for decades. And those three words are kind of at the center of sport, right? The power of the ability of the game to kind of transform people's lives, to uplift them, to create excitement and entertainment. The goodness that comes from, the banter, the camaraderie, the good that sport can actually do in the community and for society, and I'm very excited by the potential of that with the Premier League as well. And then, of course, finally, communion, right? Coming together, having a beer, watching a game, having a Guinness, and I can just say the chat is better over a Guinness, right? It's definitely better. There's more crack, there's more banter, there's more entertainment, and I'm so excited to be bringing that very, very special combination of what Guinness is about and what the Premier League is about to fans and pubs and communities all over the world.
And all over the world is key, right? This is a truly global platform.
I mean, our property in rugby has been, long established. It's particularly big in Europe. But we, obviously we have football in Africa, but in terms of APAC and the US, the Premier League, is growing rapidly as an entity in those markets as well. It's important to the Premier League that they continue to grow that audience in those markets as well. And for Guinness, that also lines up really nicely with our growth ambitions as, being a really global, fast-growing brand, like our half-one numbers where we're growing plus 14%, which would make us one of the fastest-growing beer brands in the world, right? And we are not done yet. We've more to do. And Premier League and our football partnership will help us accelerate that even further.
Absolutely. That's a comment on ambition, which is also something that's driven you both through your careers. Football, sports generally as global platforms for bringing people together. Frank, you've represented different clubs. More successfully, less successfully, you go through the challenges together. How important is that sense of community and unity in the sport itself? You change your shirt sometimes, but the commitment to the game that you've built your life in and you've lived around actually for your entire life. Like, talk about that for a minute. Like, what does it really mean when you're thinking about conversations, friends, family, what you do on the pitch, what you did on the pitch, and what you add through your punditry work to the communities that you serve through the game?
Yeah, I think I feel very fortunate that my job was always has been my passion. So to grow up as a young man, my dream was to play in the Premier League. My dream was to play for West Ham, your team. I obviously went past that to Chelsea.
You graduated and enhanced, yes.
Anyway, no, but I think it's probably interesting when we start talking about the Premier League in the broad sense, because I remember arriving at Chelsea and we started to travel and we'd have our pre-season tours in America and the Far East and different countries. And this is going back 25 years ago. People didn't really know us. We could probably get in and out of town pretty quickly and you have some support. And the explosion and the constant progression of the Premier League and the product that it is and the brand, global brand that it is, to be part of that, and now to be able to travel anywhere in the world, and we've seen the expansion of it in Africa, different continents, where now it's so well followed. And I was always ambitious as a young man. I always wanted to be better at what I did. And when I did that, it wasn't necessarily an ego thing to travel and see this happening, but it made you feel very special to be part of it. And I think that continues, and it probably changes with time. The younger, new generation, if I can call it that, are wanting to consume things in a different way. They're wanting to consume how they watch football, how they see it. The Premier League is without doubt the most entertaining and competitive league in the world. That's why we love it. Every season it goes to the wire, as it did this season. Any team can beat anybody. The talent that the Premier League has brought into and progressed over the years has been an amazing thing. So that is, I think, is ambition. I was part of that. I'm very pleased to be part of that. And that is not going to stop. And I think that's probably why listening to Grainne speak there is the combination of a Guinness talking in that way and how the Premier League is. That's why this obviously feels like a very good match now and going forwards.
Yeah, and Grainne also mentioned the commitment to positive choices and responsible drinking. You can have a pint, you can also have a pint of 0.0, and there are alternatives and there are choices that you can make. You're talking about globality there, Frank, as well, and of course the Euros are on just now. In every single market in every single part of the world, there's someone watching every single game that's happening, and they're following their players, following their own countries, but they're also interested in the sport. And that's part of what you've both mentioned. You know, they're engaged in a platform. How much further can it go? I mean, are we going to keep seeing the platform of global football grow around the world?
Absolutely. I see no other way. As I said, I think the Premier League is one example of it growing. You're talking about the Euros now, the interest that is in the sport, and the desire for development as well. As the world is changing around us, how people want to watch sport, how much we all use social media and how much that's developing, I think is so important. I've been part of that. I've witnessed that. I absolutely will not change. And I think the Premier League as well, from working closely as a player and as a manager, you see things from the other side. You have much more communication with the people that run the Premier League, and you see there's a real thirst to improve it and expand globally, but also to do the things we're talking about community and doing it in the right way. When you're that big around the world, I think it's very important that you understand those things, and the Premier League certainly does. I see that in local communities back in England, around the clubs that I've worked at, and now you see it on a much wider scale. I think the responsibility comes with that as things grow, and so them expanding in that way, that I don't see, there certainly will not be any pause for thought. It will keep going.
I just want to pick up on a point Frank was making there, which is I think the power of sport to actually change society for the better. And that's something I was just saying in passing there. I'm really excited about the potential that the Premier League partnership with Guinness offers on that front. If you look at, for example, some of the things we did with rugby, not just moving on the women's game. So as a result of the investment that we put into the women's game, viewership is up 25%, attendance of matches up, etc. So you're seeing a real impact in actually what the power of that investment can do for bringing on that. But in terms of accessibility as well, this year at the Guinness Six Nations, we partnered with ITV in a groundbreaking initiative that brought audio visual capturing for the visually impaired to that. And we also made sure that within the stadium that we had sensory guides and that we were actually investing in really growing the accessibility of the game. So, if you really put that intent at the heart of what you're trying to do, you can create really significant change and very exciting change, I think, for the teams, for the properties, for the brands, and ultimately for the communities that we're in as well.
Yeah, I think what Frank said about the sort of ongoing development and speed of access to content through different technology platforms actually only accelerates things, doesn't it? Both for brands and partners as well as for the audience. Yeah,
I mean, again, Guinness is kind of a brand that's built on community, right? So if you think of, we were chatting in the green room there, I was chatting about the influencers, which are, people who are deeply committed to sharing what their view on Guinness is about. And football has that same sort of passion, right? Where people are actually, it's like two brilliant community-based models coming together, where you're growing the communities, you're growing the intersections with them. You have an ability to, obviously, respond in real time, to create more of that connection, to hand over the keys of that connection, and actually recognize that these influencers, these community creators are creating content that's as good as anything that we would have ever dreamt of, if not better, So it's really about handing over the keys and saying, let's get going, let's see what we can do here, because I know it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm part of this process. This comes away from sport slightly, but I have been influenced myself this Christmas. I married an Irish woman, so I have Irish in-laws, and I was looking for Christmas presents, and on social media, it smacked me in the face, as it does these days when you just get fed this stuff of the Nitro Surge tap on the top of the pint. And I thought this was the most amazing thing to impress my father-in-law and brother-in-law, and it went down a storm. So I am evidence that absolutely works. Maybe not in the sport, and that was just me flicking, but I'm part of the Guinness family.
It was very targeted, Frank. We had you on our side.
You got me. I'm easy meat, easy picking.
You can do anything with data and targeting these days, Frank. We'll find you. That's a good story, because you've got connections to communities, connections to brands, and you also are passionate about it. You can see the intersections are real, aren't they? I'm going to take it off piece just a little bit here and ask about the most passionate groups of supporters and fans, whether it's for a club or a country. Where do you go to find them, and how does it feel when you're amongst them? Whether they're sort of screaming for your brand and queuing 10 deep in a bar or a pub, or screaming your name or your colleagues' names for good or bad. Talk a little bit about the feelings that you get from that level of engagement in something.
Oh, wow. I'm going to say I think where you find them is probably in their local bar, right? That's where you see the most passionate fans because they're making a commitment, right, with their socialising to say, I'm actually going to make an occasion out of this, right? They're committing to going out, to collecting the group, to getting together. And then the energy is infectious, right? You see it, the banter, the crack, the fun, the conversation. Each bar often has its own club, you know, regardless of, again, whether it's football or rugby or other sports. And I just think that's where, if you really want to experience real fans, like real fans who go week in, week out, follow their teams, follow the games, that's probably where you're going to find them. Obviously, they'll try and get to the stadium as well, but for many, that's, you know, too far or whatever. But, like, you know, I think that's where I'd say I think you get that visceral sense of this really matters. And it's an elevated occasion, right? It's something that people are going, this night in the pub is better because of this match that's on the TV and what's unfolding and the entertainment and everything. So I think it's that's probably my answer on it.
Yeah, I think probably the most passionate fans for me are when with football, and you know, if you love football, it takes you in. But it's where football becomes almost a religion and a way of life. And I worked at Everton as the manager of Everton, so I lived in Liverpool, and I never imagined I would move out of London. I've been a London boy all my life. And it really opened my eyes to see a real working class community who live for football. And a lot of their love for football is built around conversations in the pub, socialising, you know, and these things. So I think that's important because then we all love it. We talk before the game, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the team should be? We talk after the game, why did that happen? What's happening? And I think those conversations, whether you're travelling to the game or you're at home now, I like to watch a lot of football at home when I'm not there because I've played probably so long and been to the event. I quite like the comfort of my own home or going to the pub and watching it away from the big show, and you can still enjoy it absolutely as well, and you feel the passion of people around you and chatting about the match. So it's that link is always going to be there. The most passionate fans have that. We want to talk football all the time, so to talk a bit socially when enjoying a Guinness or whatever you take, then that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, it never feels like a busman's holiday if it truly is your passion. And if neither of you would have been doing what you've been doing for so long, if it wasn't truly a driver. But what else keeps you motivated? Because it's not easy to do what you do. You know, you're traveling everywhere, bigger and bigger groups of colleagues, more people depending on you. What's the motivation behind or around that personal passion that keeps you both moving?
I think there's a couple of things. For me, I'm very passionate about the power of brands to shape the world for the better. And through the work that I do on behalf of DIAGEO with the On Stereotype Alliance, the WFA, I've seen it firsthand just how much change you can create in an industry. And by virtue of that, the impact you can have, because brands fundamentally are shaping what people see and what goes into their homes. And therefore, that's something that sort of speaks quite deeply to me. It really matters. And the stories we tell do shape like the world that we live in to be more representative and inclusive. And I'm always excited about that. And by the way, I think the work is much, much better when we put that at the heart of it. And then the second thing that really motivates me is doing the work of my life, right? Creatively, I feel so privileged to work in DIAGEO in an organisation where creativity with precision is kind of our mantra. So that combination of setting an incredibly high standard for the work. In fact, on Guinness, right? I'll tell you a little side story here. In 1929, when the first marketing team went to Edward Guinness and said, we want to do an ad for Guinness, he sent them packing, right? He said, no, I don't want to do any of that. But they persevered and came back. And he set a mantra, which is, we can only advertise Guinness if the quality of the advertising is as good as the beer. And that has led us to write something on every brief in every market around the world, which is only Guinness could, only Guinness would, right? And that's what motivates me, right? The fact that there is a, century of exceptional creativity that constantly you are thinking, how can I make the next century of creative work even more exciting? I am absolutely pumped to be thinking about the creative work we're going to be bringing forward on the Premier League. It's going to be magnificent, right? And I'm not just saying that, but I'm so excited by it. And I think you see when Guinness brings that magic to that sort of creative magic, because it's so rooted in the values, that the work can be really exceptional and something that provides great entertainment and joy and meaning for people. So, they're the two things that motivate me. Shaping society for the better through the brands and the stories we tell, and doing the work of your life.
Brilliant. Frank?
Yeah, I think my experience is as a younger man trying to make my way in the world of sport and as an athlete, I think can be quite. I was very single-minded and ambitious. So my ambitions and passions were just for myself to be the best I could be. And I think as a sports person, you can actually achieve that in a slightly selfish way. You concentrate on yourself and you move forward and you try and improve yourself within a team, obviously, but individual performance is the sort of be-all and end-all. I think my viewpoints changed as I moved into management, and I realised it's actually that point how much you can influence and inspire people around you as much as what you necessarily do yourself. And it's a big difference. It's like from being single-minded about the sport to actually understanding that how you affect other people is, if not more important. And then I actually really tapped into that. I enjoyed it. And there's thing you realise interactions you have every day with people are so important, as opposed to I just thought kicking a ball and running and putting it in the back of the net was the main thing. So I suppose my ambition as a sports person was to be the best I could be. And now when I see that the effect as you mature slightly maybe as a person myself, you understand if you can influence and inspire people around you, that becomes a driving force, because you know you need people with you to be a success. And that's kind of what I found, I guess.
Yeah, and you leave things a little better than you found them, right? And you're leaving something for the people that come next. A lot of super talented athletes have some adaptability. Was it always football for you?
Yes, I guess so. I think it's a sport that you probably have to give everything, all part of your life to. I was quite fortunate. I had a good upbringing, quite good schooling. I had opportunity to do something else, but I had a footballing family. My father played, so I was kind of led down that path, and I enjoyed it. As I say, it was my passion. So I feel very lucky, because there are a lot of resilient moments needed on the steps, as we all have in life. Everyone looks back on a career and goes, that was amazing, you read out my goals. And I remember my goals I missed. Do you know what I mean? So we have those moments to be resilient. But yeah, I was fortunate enough that was always. But now I have 4 children, and they have all different interests. So I'm there supporting them, because they kind of don't know what they want to do. I understand that I didn't know what I wanted to do other than football. I was very fortunate on that side. So it's a new experience for me now to try and guide them to what they're interested in this new world and where they want to get to.
I listened to a podcast a little while ago with you and your cousin, Jamie Redknapp. And what struck me most, actually, was that hunger. Like, that you would be the guys staying behind, partly because of your family constructs and the connection to the game. You felt you had to push harder than some of the others because of the environment that you came from. Like, go a little bit stronger in practice, stay behind for some extra training, whatever it was. Do you think that still drives you? It sounds like it. For sure. I'm very interested in the nature versus nurture kind of argument. What talent? I was always a big believer in, like, you maximise your talent. Hard work sort of overrides it, and that is a talent in itself. So I felt like that was always kind of part of me. I had many deficiencies, as we all do, if we really go inside ourselves. Like, we're all a little bit nervous speaking here today or whatever. So I think my thing was always to try and work through that. And I thought if I could give maximum input myself, I'll kind of get the rewards. And it's not always a clear run, but that's kind of something that stayed with me. And this, what I would always recommend when I go back to my children would be like, well, find something that you like and really go for it. Give everything to it. Grainne, you have been with DIAGEO all your career.
Yeah, a good bit of it.
Yeah, a good bit of it. What's the one thing that, based on everything we've talked about today, the legacy, people, communities, communion, what's the next target that you've got for the next stage of your career with this brilliant brand building business?
Look, honestly, I absolutely love what I do. I feel incredibly fortunate that I work in a company with amazing brands, incredible legacy brands, that we get to do amazing work, like sign things like the Premier League deal, right, and sit on the stage with Frank Lampard and Toby Southgate. So, I actually, I just think I love what I do, and I just want to keep doing it, and I want to keep doing it in a way that, continues to, as I said, bring marketing forward as realising its power, I think, both for society but also in the boardroom as a really big driver and lever of growth. And, I love the fact that what we do sort of sees around the corner of the challenges that businesses are facing, right? We're the ones that have access to amazing data, incredible insight, incredible performance management tools, incredible partners and agencies. And, I just think that's got a bit of magic to it. So I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Just want to keep doing it better. Yeah.
Frank, anything left for you?
I hope so.
What in terms of achievements or events, what would you like to do in the game as your next step? Other than go to Germany tomorrow for
Yeah.
at the next stage?
I'm working in the media. I'm going to Germany tomorrow to work a couple of games. And that, of course, you're still one step in the football world doing that. But my passion is to be involved more. I love coaching. It was such a different challenge for me, as I mentioned before, touching on being a player, transitioning into a coach, learning about people, relationships, how important they are. So that's the thing that gets me going, you know. So I want to do that, but I also am very fortunate. I'm very fortunate and feel it to be able to be here, meeting new people, listening, learning, and those things. So, yeah, doing that, and trying to be a good dad, things like that.
Still a lot of hunger and ambition in both of you, and maybe one day, Frank, manager at the Olympic Stadium. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope so. Who knows?
So do I. That'd be a marvellous
maybe.
outcome. I'm going to ask a final question, because at 4 o'clock I am reliably informed that the licensing regulations on Sports Beach relax a little bit. What's going to be the drink of choice today? 25 degrees and sunny. We've been doing this for an hour or so in prep and chatting. What's it going to be?
Well, I've been eyeing up the Guinness tap that's up there, and that's got my name all over it, so that's where I'm heading.
Frank?
There's going to be a queue, because I'm there too. I'll be there too.
It's okay, Frank. I'll let you go first. Yeah,
Is that right? Thank you very much.
Lovely. Well, maybe some lessons on pouring from that tap.
Absolutely, happy to, yeah.
Fantastic. Guys, a huge round of applause, please. 2 fantastic guests. Lovely way to end the day on Sports Beach. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Grainne.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That ends our panel sessions for today. Well, we have one important competition. Who can be the first off the court? On your marks, get set, go!